Hi, this is Dr. Dorenzo, and I'd like to welcome you back to Session 7 of Anger Management Training. Today we're going to learn about assertiveness training and the conflict resolution model. But first, as always, let's review the homework as well as what we learned about last week. So, what number did you reach on the anger meter over the past few days or the past week? What was the highest number? Hopefully, the number is increasingly lower with every check-in. Describe the specific event that led to this. So, what were some of the cues you felt or experienced? Try to identify one or two from each of the four categories. Which technique are you utilizing most to control your anger? And are you practicing relaxation techniques daily? I do hope that you are. Are you utilizing your anger plan? And are you self-correcting when you notice your anger meter rising? And again, we want to be thinking event, cues, and strategies. We want to have a good plan. So let's learn about aggression, passivity, and assertiveness. As we discussed in Session 1, one of the myths of anger is that we have to act aggressively to get what we want. Although it is true that we might get what we want, we leave everybody else involved uneasy. It is also true that passivity on the other end of the spectrum is not the answer either. So what is the middle ground between aggression and passivity? The answer is assertiveness. So assertiveness lies, yes, in the middle of aggression and passivity. So let's talk about finding this middle ground. Aggression is a learned behavior. Now, we're all born with the ability to have aggression, and it's very animalistic. It's an innate response. But we learn whether we can use it or not to get what we want based on our environment and whether it's allowed and whether it's been modeled for us. Aggression is intended to cause harm, injury, or destruction. Aggressive behavior can be characterized by verbal abuse and threats or physical abuse. It is a reckless way to get cooperation from others and is strictly fear-based. Hopefully we have begun already to unlearn these aggressive behaviors by using the tools in our anger control plan. Passivity, on the other end, again, it's also a learned behavior. It's an innate response, but we learn to use it over time based on whether it gets our needs met, regardless of whether it's functional or not. So it's typically dysfunctional. We all know that aggression is not an effective behavior to exercise, but that does not mean that we jump to the opposite side of the spectrum and practice being passive. Passivity allows people to violate our rights and take advantage of us. It may keep you from receiving negative consequences, but you are likely to develop personal negative consequences like self-esteem issues. It also requires that we suppress our negative thoughts and feelings because we have been told that they are unacceptable. So today we will also unlearn passive behavior and begin to learn some tools to become more assertive. So let's talk about assertiveness. So yes, assertiveness is also a learned behavior. It's rooted in the idea that your thoughts and feelings are equally as important as everybody else's. So assertiveness is probably less innate and something that we've come to as human beings as we've evolved over time and we've been able to modulate or mitigate our impulses to either be aggressive or to be very passive. With a higher brain functioning as a human being. So again, assertiveness is rooted in the idea that your thoughts and feelings are equally as important as everybody else's. And we know that we have a right, and you have a right to stand up for what you believe in while being respectful to everybody involved. Being assertive means that you deal with conflict in an honest, direct, and respectful way. These are traits that we admire and that make getting along and getting ahead in life easier. To learn how to become more assertive, we will practice using the conflict resolution model. So here is the conflict resolution model. It's a 5-step process. to assertiveness training that should be practiced over and over again so that it becomes a learned behavior. The first 4 steps really have to do with an internal dialogue that you as the person do with yourself when you're in conflict, and the 5th one is what you do with the other person or the situation that you're in conflict with. So number 1, identify the problem, identify the feelings, identify the impact of the problem, decide whether to resolve the conflict, and then finally work toward resolving the conflict. Now we're going to talk about them in a little more in depth, each one in depth. So identifying the problem, number 1. It is important to keep the problem specific so that you are able to deal with the actual problem. Remember to state the facts of the problem so that you can have a solid basis for identifying your feelings about the specific issue. Number 2, identifying the feelings. Ask yourself, how is this problem making me feel? Am I frustrated, annoyed, guilty? It may also be effective to consider how the other person feels, but never assume that you know. Leave it up to the encounter to be certain of that. Number 3, identifying the impact of the problem. Identify the negative repercussions of this problem and how it affects you. How would you like this problem changed? Decide whether to resolve the conflict, number 4. Now, make a decision to either resolve the conflict by being mindful of the first 3 steps and by being assertive, or let the problem go. To make this decision, ask yourself, will this problem keep occurring and have potential to make me angry in the future? The answer should tell you whether or not you should solve it. You should resolve it. And step 5. So finally, this is with the other person or the situation. Address and resolve the conflict. The first step is to check the other person's schedule so that both of you have time to resolve the issue. Obviously, this is a practical matter. You want to make sure that the person's available to talk to you at the time and not feel like you're rebuffed or ignored. So you say, do we have time to talk about an issue that I have? And then next, describe the conflict, your feelings, and the impact of the conflict in a respectful and honest way. Finally, ask that the problem be resolved and, if necessary, discuss a possible plan or compromise. If you executed this process to the best of your knowledge and the other person still doesn't cooperate to resolve the conflict, just let it go and know that you have done all that you could. Remember that practice makes perfect. In order to become an assertive person, we must persistently practice the 5 steps until it becomes second nature or part of our repertoire of learned behavior. So I want you to take some time and imagine engaging in conflict resolution with another person using these topics. And just quickly run through the steps in your mind, if you can, and this new attitude of trying to find resolution. Dealing with a rude or unhelpful sales clerk. Dealing with a physician who will not take the time to explain how a medication works. Dealing with a supervisor who does not listen. Dealing with a counselor who always cancels your sessions. Dealing with a friend who does not respect your privacy. Practicing these examples through imagination and in real life will give a deeper understanding of how to act in these tough situations and in other similar situations, and absolutely make you better at resolving conflict in the future. Let's talk about the exercises that I would like you to work on in between session 7 and session 8. I want you to reflect on the lesson about assertiveness. This week, I want you to self-correct by being mindful of your aggressive or passive tendencies and shift to assertiveness. I want you to provide an example of you being assertive over the next few days and describe how you either shifted away from being passive or aggressive to the healthier stance of being assertive. I would also like you to practice using the conflict resolution model and give an example when it was utilized. Outline how you use the 5-step model. So remember, identify the problem, identify the feelings, identify the impact of the problem, decide whether to resolve the conflict, and then work toward resolving the conflict, finally, with the other person or situation. And then finally, I would like you to continue to rate your anger level on the anger meter over the next few days and continue to rely on a strategy that works for you. Also, continue to practice progressive muscle relaxation, body scanning for tense muscles, and deep breathing exercises daily. And I promise you, if you practice these things, you will begin to get better and feel better. And be more confident in managing your anger. It takes practice every day. This is the end of session 7.